This is Ted, and Ted just had another situation today where people are like Sadducees and Pharisees are attempting to trap Ted. And they do this by going up to Ted and talking about God when Ted just looks at them and remains silent and says nothing. Or they talk about God and they point up and they refer to God, and Ted just basically remains silent and says nothing. Or they pray to God in front of Ted, or ask Ted, can we pray for you? Ted says, yes, go ahead, pray for me. And they pray for Ted, and they pray insisting God is up, and they're praying up to God. Now, either this is they don't not believe in Ted, do not even understand who Ted is proclaimed and declared to be, or are attempting to trap Ted. And sometimes Ted breaks it to them gently, or breaks it to them slowly, or legally, discusses things with them first on their religious beliefs, or tries to understand what they believe, and wants to talk to them a little bit first before he breaks it to them who he is legally proclaimed and declared to be. Therefore, he doesn't immediately just say, I am God, and you can't pray up to God because I am God to everybody. In fact, he rarely has ever said this. He, holds back and sometimes asks them questions about their beliefs, tries to understand what they believe, tries to understand if they really believe God is up, tries to understand and get help from angels. And it takes a little time to understand whether or not they understand who Ted really is legally proclaimed and declared to be, and if they're a we won't say if they're for Ted or really to an enemy of Ted's. What are they? Ted tries to figure out what they are. And he doesn't exert too much energy if they're an enemy, a problem for, against Ted, an enemy to a nemesis. He doesn't exert much energy. He just sometimes allows them to contort and go through their religious contortions, and then is like in the next, who am I going to talk to next? Also, when Ted has closed his eyes and bowed his head, he is praying to himself. For over 10 years, if Ted prays, he prays to himself. He shows reverence in front of people that still believe God is up, simply to show reverence. He doesn't sit there with his eyes completely open, or tell people, I am God, or stand up and shout in a room, or shout to the people, I am God. You can't pray to God. God is not up. I am God. He doesn't, say this, and he doesn't get up and start shouting it. He doesn't say it or get up and start shouting it in the middle of a sanctuary or a church, and show irreverence and start shouting, I am God. You can't pray up to God. God is not up. I am God. I am the only God. I am the one living God. You can't pray to God. God is not up. You keep referring to God up. In fact, many of you keep pointing. God is up. God is not up. I am God. He doesn't do this. He doesn't interrupt people. He doesn't tell them they can't pray to God because he is God. He just accepts it to be a prayer to Ted. And he definitely, in a situation where he wants to show reverence, doesn't stop them, doesn't interrupt them, and absolutely has never interrupted anybody in a sanctuary or a church, or stood up and shouted, you can't pray to God, I am God, or started shouting, I am God, and interrupting a service, interrupting prayer, interrupting the church. He has not done this, and he doesn't do this. Ted also remains undercover in quite a few situations, and will not even admit he is the proclaimed and declared second coming of Jesus Christ and the Creator and God to rebuild earth. He will not declare and proclaim himself to specific people because of security problems. The light sensor went off again. There's a light sensor here in this room. There's security issues with Ted, and he doesn't constantly proclaim and declare himself to people. He keeps his mouth shut these days because there's too many security problems. There are people that still don't understand who Ted is. And Ted's caught a real bad cold because he's homeless and he's sleeping outside. He's caught a real severe cold that he's having a difficult time getting over. Therefore, Ted does not go around legally proclaiming and declare himself, face to face to humans. He rarely does this. He rarely tells them anything. Therefore, some of you thinking you've trapped Ted, you've caught Ted, you've got Ted to subtly admit that he's not God, and there really is God up in heaven, and God's up. Ted is subtly admitting he's not God. This is not even close to accurate. This is not even true. And Ted is not attempting to deceive anybody. Ted does cover up sometimes and stand undercover, and for security reasons too, doesn't tell everybody who he's proclaimed and declared to be face to face. Some people don't even understand it, and he just keeps his mouth shut, and he allows them to believe what they want to believe, and he doesn't get into it, because telling them face to face and breaking it to them like this, almost every single person has either run from him or been hostile to hateful. It just doesn't work. They have to find him on the internet. They have to hear, through others that believe in Ted. They have to hear it through others pushing that Ted is the real one and believing this, where it just doesn't work. Face to face, he can't just legally proclaim and declare himself to be the second coming of Jesus Christ, the Creator and God. It just does not work. Ted has enough experience with this. It does not work. Okay? You have to basically ease them into it. You have to break it to them slowly. You have to somehow explain to them. He can't just walk around proclaiming and declaring himself to people. It doesn't work face to face and in person. It just doesn't work.